Well, it's 24 degrees here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning and welcome to the show. Today is the 23rd day in the month of June, and the temperature is looking something like 27 degrees right now. And guess what? As they always tell us from Abuja, it could rise to any height. Welcome to your daily dose of sunshine this morning.
Well, the prayer is that it doesn't rise to just any height, that it stays within what people can bear. And speaking of what people can bear, you know, there's only so much that Nigerians, and not just Nigerians, I think generally in the world right now, everyone is a little apprehensive of what is going on between Iran, Israel, and now the United States, which founded certain locations, certain nuclear locations within Iran, you know, over the weekend. And, you know, it was interesting watching the UN Security Council meeting. But back home here, you know, quite a number of states also had their own security concerns. And the skyline where we're taking you to this morning, Kano is one of those states where we understand there was an explosion in the scrap market. We're not showing you visuals of the scrap market. We're just trying to say that there are other sides. So this is just to help you relax somewhat, because really, I do know that when you think about all that is happening locally and internationally, it can be a lot to bear. But maybe sometimes we just take a look at, you know, everyday activities and say, it's going to be all right. It will be all right. So let's just take a look at this skyline and see how we can remind ourselves of normalcy. Yes. People going to school, people going about their places of work, you know, the very high rise, the very interesting high rise you see in the picture right now is that of the Yusuf Maitama Sule University, right smack in the middle of the city of Kano. Ayo, I hope that this also helps you relax too, because if you're like me, you know, when you're trying to make sense of all that is happening locally and internationally, sometimes you wish that you would just be on a plane by yourself, you know, taking a look at the world from up there and just saying, you know what, it's going to be okay. Ayo.
Well, it definitely is going to be okay. I've taken a few air flights, helicopter flights. And when you are coming into any city and you take a look at the skyline, you definitely wonder what a beautiful country we have. And the long shot of the Kano city that we saw earlier should tell you that we are a beautiful nation, a lovely country, a wonderful one at that. And there are so many things that we should be grateful for in our country. And one of them is such a beauty as Kano City. The things that many people hear or see about northern Nigeria is all doom and gloom. But guess what? There's also boom, S-B-O-O-M. Without the bombings, without the explosions, without the unrest, without the uncertainty of sleeping and waking up, Kano City is a beautiful country, it's a beautiful city. And the different parts of Nigeria that we have brought you on this program from time to time, and trust me, there is a lot more to come. We are going far and wide to ensure that we let you see and know how beautiful a country we have on our hands. So just imagine someone doing some dastardly act to destroy the beauty that is in your face right now. To them, it may look like it's just a little something, but in the larger scheme of things, it's a lot. Kano City, in case you are wondering, dates back many, many centuries, and it is one of the 7 medieval Hausa kingdoms. And one would wonder, how come? You know, it is like that. But history is history. So please savor it for a minute or two, or maybe for a second or two. We'll be right back after.
Well, I do hope that that was a little soothing for you, because really in our country there is so much to, take in at every point in time. The fact that people are trying to go about their daily businesses, earn a living, they're trying to plan their future, plan the future of their kids, and then they hear some of this news that, are really, really shocking to hear. I mean, is it in Borno State where there was a suicide bombing, or is it in Plateau State where people who were traveling, innocent travelers going for a wedding, were mobbed by people who maybe assumed that they had been part of something had happened to them before now? Or is it in Kano State where someone just willingly drove a vehicle all the way from Yobe and went to a scrap market and detonated an explosive there? It is a lot to take, but it was seemed that the president is taking all in his stride. He's issued a condolence message of some sort, and also asked his security men to make sure that they fish out the perpetrators of, some of these incidences. For instance, the one that has happened in Plateau State. I understand that the governor there, Governor Muftuang, has also, expressed shock and, condolences with the people that lost their lives, and is also trying to look after those who survived that mob attack. But while we're looking at that, there's also reason to hope, as Ayo has also highlighted, that, when you talked about Kano being one of the 7 kingdoms or 7 emirates, you would know that that city has been through so many things, as has many parts of our country. And that's because as a people, we show resilience, which is what it is that we need through this season. Whether you're looking at local news or you're looking at international news, we all now need to wear that brace of resilience. And while we're wearing that brace of resilience, we also continue to urge security agencies to do the most that they can. So right now, we're going to be taking you to Benue, where Yelwata hasn't been forgotten. Remember the president asking if there had been any arrests? Well, it does appear that there are now some arrests. The police isn't, there's still a little sealed lip as to how many people they've arrested, etc. But they are confirming to us that they have now arrested a few suspects in the attacks that happened on Yelwata. So take a listen.
I can assure you that a number of the suspects who committed the heinous act are with police. And with in due course, we will make a press release on that, and you will know them. But you can assure you that we have arrested a number of them, and we are still on the trail of some of them. About for the motivation of the government, I can assure you that we work hand in hand with the state governor. The state governor provides, make adequate provision for all our logistic needs. But the rest assured that we're on top of the security situation in Benue State. All the ID camps have been provided with the adequate security, and people are safe there. The villages, the farmlands have been provided with the adequate security. The governor have been very supportive, and he's even willing to support more to make sure that the peace and security we desire is restored in Benue State. On the part of the Inspector General of Police, he have deployed numerous or very many tactical squads and several units of mobile police force. And in our own part, we have deployed to all the nooks and crannies of the state.
To take on this conversation. Dr. Sheyi Alita joins us this morning. He's CEO, Eons Intelligence, and he's here with us in the studio. Thank you for joining us today. Forgive me. With the incidents in Konduga, Borno State, the incidents in Plateau, the massacre in Benue, I fear it's looking like this spate of insecurity is a seasonal thing.
Well, it's safe to say that. If you look at the fact
it's safe to say that?
It's safe to say that, because if you look at the trend, that kind of towards a particular period in our national life, we tend to have a spike, and then suddenly, after so much effort, everything will go down. Lately, we've been having incidents across several states, and they've been, comments like probably it is political, maybe towards the election, and we can also look at the fact that we are back to the planting season, and lots of people have moved from the township into the farms. So that will naturally give rooms to possibility of clashes between herders and farmers. That because we're having more people now in the farm areas now trying to farm because now it is raining. So if you wait and look at the statistics in the past and look at what we're having, then you can say that probably it is seasonal, and but it doesn't have to be like that. If we're able to put the right things in place and try to start doing something different from what we're doing before, so that we can actually stem this tide.
But it's so on the one hand, there are issues of that are in the way that you've put it, farmer herders, or people wanting to stop other people from farming or harvesting without paying some kind of penance, if we can use that term. But then how do we explain suicide bombings?
Well, suicide bombing is a means. You see, okay, like for example now in Borno State, the situation in Borno State is different. It's not farmer herders. We have terrorist insurgents there. And we know that the ultimate goal of the insurgent is to capture land. They want to carve out territory. So terrorism bombing is a means to an end, not an end itself. So at every point in time, they try to look for way or what is available for them to be able to strike, pain and terror in the heart of the people. For example, like this time last year, we had similar incidents in Borno State where areas that had been cleared, the farmers were asked to remain within the cleared area, but we had farmers who actually moved outside of the cleared areas when they were advised not to, and they were kidnapped. The issues around women, young girls being kidnapped around that period last year, or being, they were strapped with suicide vests this time last year to carry out similar attacks inside of the cities in Borno State. So it's about us being able to understand the trend and how this thing works. So people are now going back, or they've gone back to farms now. So the person who carried out, we've not gotten much information as per the suicide bomber, is the victim or the bomber, a regular individual that have been strapped with a vest, or one of the insurgents was strapped with a suicide vest to carry out the suicide bombing.
So I'm still at a loss. I'm still in that space where you say that insecurity is seasonal in our country.
Not just in Nigeria, it is everywhere. United States, the UK. We've seen situations where people are now going into stores and, broad daylight, and they'll be stealing from stores. So if you look at the trends in globally, insecurity most times are seasonal. It's a particular period when things will go so high. The incidents will go so high. Why? Because there are some factors that are perennial. And the moment they are within that period, a whole lot of people will start throwing cautions into the wind. They're also having more people that are going to crimes and criminality.
How come, Dr. Adetayo, that this trend that you're talking about, this seasonal trend, is mostly replete in certain parts of the country as opposed to the other?
Because of what we are looking at. There are other parts of countries that are having their own types of incidents that probably they are no longer alarming to us, and the people no longer report them like we do on issues around, maybe because of the magnitude, of what we're experiencing in Benue, in Nasarawa State, Plateau State, what we've seen happened in Borno State. And if you ask the Nigerian police to actually open up their books and show you see that, at a particular period in time in this country, we used to have uptick, in the numbers of incidents. But we classify some incidents as more worrisome than the others. So, and we all have our nature of insecurity in all areas. Even in the Southeast, as you speak now, there's incidents going on in the Southeast. But maybe people have become so immune to certain things that they no longer shout about it. But that's the reality.
The most concerning of these incidences is the loss of lives.
Of
5
course.
people have just recently died again in this explosion in Kano that the police commissioner in the state suspects to be a military-grade mortar.
So the issue around Kano cannot be seen as an attack until we have more information in that regard. It is safe to say that it's a safety-related issue. Well, because number one, it's a scrapyard, and we've seen lots of people buy things. Most it is metal. We've seen situations where even unexploded ordnances, in the southeast and some other places, some people will just pick it up and it will explode. We had one incident in Lagos here. I think it was last year around what's this place close around that Surulere, Idiaraba side, scrap metal yard, where an unexploded ordnance was bought by a scavenger, and while playing with it, maybe they're trying to move, it exploded and killed maybe 1 or 2 people at that particular point in time. So it's a scrapyard metal incident. So this one may largely be around safety related and how we've been able to dispose of how well we dispose of ordinances that are not meant to be within the civilian population.
So when the State Commissioner of Police, Ibrahim Adamu, was quoted as saying that he found there was a suspected explosion, it could not have been planned.
Explosion, see, that can be gas explosion, anything.
And he said possibly a military mortar bomb.
Blast. Yeah, it's just the same thing that I said. Unexploded military ordinances. We've seen incidents like this happen in other parts of the country. The problem is that it has to do with how do we manage our expired, unexploded ordinances, the ones that are, used during previous military campaigns in Nigeria and, found their ways into people who buy scrap metals.
Okay. I know that Malpo will want to come in on this conversation briefly, but let me just ask you this one. There are those who have suspected that, look, maybe if the political class in each of these states got themselves, together and did their part, maybe things wouldn't get as bad as they became. For instance, the president was saying to the governor of Benue State, look, let's have a group of elders in the state, and he started with former governors of the state come together to have conversations around insecurity in the state and ensure that there is security in the state. Could some of these incidences we are having, could they be because of political differences, whether surreptitiously or directly?
So we can't take that away from what is happening because it may not necessarily be that because they are infighting. At times when those elected to to hold positions are not being responsible enough to see security or to place security at the level it should be in their state. So one of the questions I used to ask is that when governors meet with the service commanders, what do they discuss? Is it around policy formulation or it is operational? I think it is high time that Nigerian Governors Forum need to rejig their training manual for how they train governors. Governors need to begin to see themselves like president of a small, tiny countries. They need to begin to see themselves that the security of this state starts with them, not with Mr. President. And they need to begin to see the service commanders in their state as working for them. Yes, you might not be in control, but you are their commander. So they should start operating as a commander, sit with them, go, if it requires, go with them. It's not just about sitting and get to know how many incidents happen in the state and that's what you are doing. No, Sit down. You've watched, I mean, if we've not seen, but at least we've watched the movies when you see, you know, an American president sitting, you know, in the GSOC room or whatever they call it, you know, where they planned the operation. They need to start planning operation. Those that they feel that, you know, working at cross purpose with them, get the Attorney General of the state to look at the aspect of the law that will deal with such people, then let the law take its course and be executive. That is where we are failing. Exactly. See, the kind of money that we spend on frivolities when people are dying in your state, I don't expect a governor to be going about saying he's doing commissioning of the road. For crying out, people have seen that you've done roads. You can later do the commissioning later. Divert the money right there and then into issues that will preserve the life of the people in your state, and not just buying, you know, 50 vehicles and say, oh, I've invested in security. Security is far more than you buying vehicles. Okay. It's you getting involved in actually the operations of the state, because the resources that they are going to need, the logistics they are going to need, you know how much of, you see, let me give you an example. The IJ can decide to say, okay, I have like 1,000 vehicles with me, budget. If they can decide to share it equally, to say, but are all the states having equal security challenges? So that gap, it is for you as a governor of that state to fill that gap, to say, okay, you have 20, but the security in the state requires 2,000 vehicles. And I'm going to make sure that I provide those 2,000 vehicles, and I'm going to make sure that the other at the first level, which is the people, I try to create a security layers in each community to support what the police is doing, and create enough intelligence to support your operation and make the state. So the state, look at Lagos, for example. If it's possible for it to be done in Lagos, it can be done anywhere else.
Okay. Harper?
You know, I look at our response sometimes, and I'm a little, I don't know whether we're doing it how we're supposed to do it. So let's take a look at what has happened over this weekend now. The ordnance explosion in Kano, the mob action that happened in Plateau State, and then we also had the suicide bombing in Borno State. I do not know if you see a link between all three, because for a number of people now, it's becoming a little complex to analyze our security situation. Can you draw a thread through all three incidences and see, you know, if there's a connection?
Okay. To me, I see the Kano incident until there is new information stating otherwise. The police commissioner have not said that it was an attack, but he did confirm that it was an explosion of an ordnance. So I'm seeing it as safety-related issue, an hazardous situation that was not properly managed, or people were careless with things that they should not be involved with. So who to blame, that is entirely different in that regard. And I don't see any connection with that yet, with what is happening in Borno. Borno's situation has been there for a long time, far back as, you know, 14, 15 years ago, even 17 years ago, that we've been, you know, on this issue around Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, which is largely issues related to Boko Haram. And so much has been done. Remember, there are times in the life of this country that explosions like this was a daily and monthly occurrences. But now, it is just one time. We had similar incident about this time also last year during the beginning of the farming season, that some people moved outside of the safe zones, and they were kidnapped and strapped with suicide vest. And probably that is what we're seeing happening again. And for the Benue Nasarawa Plateau incident, it's also connected to, you know, issues around land. And we know that when planting season, also farming season and harvesting season starts, we used to have uptake in issues around like this. So you see, we can't deny the fact that we are having pockets of incidents or issues across states of the Federation, but largely they are not, can't be said to be connected. However, if there are non-state actors that are trying to take advantage of various incidents in each state to actually try to create insecurity, that we await security agencies to be able to bring that up, go after them, and then use the instruments of the law to bring them to justice. But the most important thing is that security must start at the state level. The state governor should be able to rally around all the local government chairmen. The money they are collecting should be used judiciously. All these frivolities at this particular point in time is no longer, meaningful. Right now, people are dying. Their focus right now should be about stemming the tide and then put up long-lasting, time-tested measures in place. And that will start with creating a first layer of defense, which will be the people. The people must be trained, the people must be prepared, and they must be properly organized, just the same way that it has been done in some states, so that there can be immediate response while waiting for secondary response from the security agencies.
For me right now, I'm looking at all that you have said, and some people will say, well, it points very clearly to a very, very fragile state of affairs in our country. When you look at the fact that we don't, if really that was a military-grade explosive, as we have been told, there'll be questions as to how did that military-grade explosive escape from wherever it was supposed to have been kept. Even if it was up for disposal, it raises questions as to how we dispose of things like this. You look at what has happened in Plateau State, for instance. Clearly, it does appear that, there is dissatisfaction and mistrust of, how things have been handled with the onslaught that has happened in Mongo, for instance. And that's why it was appear that people are still very much on edge and are willing to take out their anger on, anybody who looks like who they have profiled their enemies to be, which is what could have resulted in what we have now seen. We saw such a situation as well in Edo State, in Uromi precisely, when people who were said to be traveling back home were attacked because that particular community has suffered from attacks before now. So there are questions as to how it is that we respond to some of these issues. The governor of Borno State has also been, crying out loud that there is, a resurgence of some sort of the insurgents in Borno State. And so it does appear that these suicide bombings are no surprise. So I'm just wondering, do you think that we are sufficiently handling? Because if Mongo is any indication as to what happened in Mongo is any indication, if we're going to learn any lessons there, some people will say that whatever lessons we're learning, we had better start applying in Yelwata, because those are people who are still quite raw from what it is that they have experienced. So would you say that what you're seeing right now in terms of the handling of the security agencies and all the other extra government agencies that ought to be intervening, for instance, maybe peace and reconciliation, prosecution, are we really doing the best that we can to make sure that incidences like this do not occur again?
Let me start with the Borno incident. See, the fact that we are having an incident of one suicide bomber doesn't mean that the security agencies have not worked. When they work and they're able to stem the tide of an incident, we really don't know. We don't know how many of such that have been intercepted. We don't know how many of such people have been arrested. We don't know how many of such incidents have been neutralized before they actually carry out. So probably when one slipped through their fingers and it happened, at times it might make it look as if maybe they've gone to sleep. So I think we should give them their flowers in Borno State. They've done a lot. And for many of us that have been following the trends in Borno State, we'll know that the theater commanders, the armed forces, the intelligence agencies, they've actually been, on their feet working in Borno State. So this one that happened is also a call for them to do more and to ensure that, they don't allow any to slip through their fingers. So I'm not going to see that as a failure on their part. I'm just going to see that as the need for them to see that these people, even as much as they are trying to put countermeasures in place, these people are also trying to counter their countermeasures. So that's that about the Borno incident. You spoke about around the ordinance. See, there are several ways in which unexploded ordnance can get into the hands of civilians. I remember I've seen committees around these, especially areas where we've had civil war battles and military armaments being intercepted in the past, or the ones that were planted, buried on the ground during the civil war and other incidents, and they were unable to remove all. We've seen incidents where the people who, maybe in the course of them planting or tilling the ground, discovered some of these things and they carried it and it exploded, maybe mines or different. And we've also seen situations where military armaments were intercepted or, recovered during the attacks on military formations. And in the process, some of these things start moving from one hand to the other and they go to the wrong hand. Usually, Boko Haram and terrorists don't usually use this military ordinance per se, except when they are carrying out insurgent activities. But for suicide attacks or bombings, they normally build their own bomb. That's why we call it improvised explosive design. Reason, they need to consider concealment. They need to consider, the proportionality of what they want to do with where they want to do it, and they also need to also take into consideration how they will move that items, to where they want to do it. So likely they always try to build theirs so that they can be able to carry out without being detected. So when you see things around, military ordnance like this exploding, it's not. I don't think it was done or it was brought there for the purpose of attack. I think this must have carelessly, been mishandled, and then found its way into that scrapyard and it exploded. I'm not sure this was bought from any military formation or barracks because they have strict measures and strict procedures, SOPs on how they handle even expired explosives and the rest. So until the security agencies are those responsible for investigating this, until they come out with full reports, we just have to wait so that we can get more information. But I don't see this, I don't believe that this is an attack.
Okay, so let's even say that it's not an attack. But I've also spoken about Benue and, recovery process, given what has now happened in Mango. Looking at what happened in that situation, would you say that we're right now on the path to recovery for the communities affected by, attacks every now and again?
One, and I strongly believe that our road to full recovery and peace in those areas will not come overnight. Our is a long road, and in the course of us, working towards getting to the other end, there are still going to be pockets of incident that we'll see. Now, how we handle those systems from now will determine whether we're going to get to the other end fast enough, or it's going to take us years before we get to the other hand. So now what we need to do now, my advice now is to x-ray what is the response now to the incident now in Mango, how is the state government handling it, how are the stakeholders in the state, how are they handling it, and then what sort of support is the federal government giving them right now in ensuring that this does not lead to reprisal and it does not lead to escalation again. At times, what we don't understand is that at times these things are carried out by criminals. Not necessarily, an ethnic planned attack, but some criminals who all their life is to go and attack community, plunder the community, take for their own personal aggrandizement, not because they are trying to protect, or trying to avenge.
So it's an economic crime.
Yeah, most times it's an economic crime. Now, but the people attack, what they see is the language, the tribe of the people that attack them, and they will assume that it was an ethnic, motivated.
Has any coloration of...
Yes.
Okay. No, just one last one, because a number of other things should have been discussed, but how about our level of preparedness for such emergencies? It would seem like, or even a likelihood that these things, prevention of them, as opposed to, dealing with them after the fact. And then when they occur, what's our level of preparedness? We talk about this only after people have died.
we are still very far away, to be honest, and sadly enough, from that level. But we'll get there. You know, there's been years of abandonment, years of neglect in terms of you know, how we respond. Not that we are not preparing, but it is not commensurate to the level of, you know, incidents, enormity of challenges at hand. You know, look at each of those states. The state emergency response, what is their budget? Are they just relying on NEMA to always come to their aid? How much are the state assembly budgeted for their own state emergency response? State emergency response is not just about bringing relief material. It's about responding at the time that calls, you know, is made. Okay. How many helicopters do they have? How many, you know, medical response team do they have? Anyway, let's to get to the sites immediately?
I think the point has been made, you know, that we don't have enough. We don't even plan it. But you said we are on the way there, but we'll get there soon. Yeah. Question a number of people will be asking you is, how many people have to die before that happens? But it's not a question we can answer now. Thank you so much for your time for this morning. Dr. Seyi Adetaya, CEO, Eons Intelligence. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Let's have a short break, and when we return, we'll take on another matter entirely.
Well, while all that was going on in the world and even locally was going on, here in Abuja, the 67th Ordinary Session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of the Economic Community of West African States, Ecowas, was held right here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you know, held his, well, I say, he chaired his last session, his last ordinary session as chairman of that particular commission. He's now handed over to a new chair, who is the president of Sierra Leone, President Madabio. Well, this morning we're taking a look at some of the outcomes from that particular meeting and what exactly should be the stance of ECOWAS in all that is currently prevailing across the world. Joining us right now is Mr. Sam Kargbo, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria, a law teacher, a newspaper columnist, and believe it or not, a movie producer. It's good to see you this morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning.
Well, I do not know how you have been following or how you follow the events that happened right here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, but I can bet my last penny that you have certainly been following what has been happening internationally between Israel, Iran, and now the United States. Knowing what you know, though, about ECOWAS and the challenges we have locally, what do you think should be our stance, given all that is happening internationally and the implications that it could have for us as a country and also as a region?
Well, basically, the challenge is for us to put our acts together, because just like you rightly said, we are in a very precarious moment. The war in Israel and the war between Israel and Iran, I will call it a war, is pretending to be a very harsh reality on all of us economically, because very soon we will see the effect of it in the price of oil. And even though Nigeria is an oil-producing country, we know that selling the crude oil alone is not enough for us to stabilize our economy. The flip aspect of it is that much of the end product of the oil itself, which is the fuel we use for much of what we use as fuel for our own vehicles, our own factories, and all of that are going to come from abroad. irrespective of the efforts that is being made by Dangote. So we are going to have that effect very soon on an economy that is stuttering. And for the region, the challenge is that, especially the posture from Trump in banning of our citizens in visiting America, it would trickle down to what ECOWAS itself has identified, which is it would hamper trade and, of course, also create further challenges to our own economy. So the imperative is that we have to really go back to the purpose and the spirit for which ECOWAS was established. It was an economic union, yes, but it also has its own political imperatives. If we do not get serious about our own integration, not just economically, but politically, we're going to find ourselves in a situation that it may not be too good for us. So the message is very clear. We have to actually go back to the intendment of the founding fathers for the creation of ECOWAS. ECOWAS has to be much more reorganized and re-energized, and it should move faster from the talk shop they've been having towards the purpose, like I said, which is economic integration. And at the bottom of that is financial integration. We should by now have a common currency so that trade will be seamless within the region. Without that, we're going to be wasting efforts and resources on ECOWAS.
It's a tricky one. I'm looking at the inaugural speech of President Bill in his own round of chairmanship, and he says he's prioritizing 4 key areas, namely restoring constitutional order and deepening democracy, revitalizing regional security cooperation, unlocking economic integration, and building institutional credibility, which is where it would seem ECOWAS is having a bit of a challenge right now, given the fact that 3 of its members, are now former members. I understand that their flags went up there yesterday. Of course, the grace period and all the periods of grace given to them have now been exhausted, and they did not take advantage of it. Nonetheless, it does appear that somehow there is no way that the entire region can move forward without these 3 being included. So how do you think you're going to set about the task of building institutional credibility when we still have members who oftentimes do not want to follow the rules?
It's a very serious one, and I would use your word. This is a very tricky one for Madabio himself. Yes, he's an experienced leader. I do not think that his colleagues selected him out of the cup. Yes, it's a rotational thing, but he must also come to the party with some credentials. He's been in power all through his life. He was, what would you call those days, what they call the key leaders. He was part of Strasser's government. They were in their 20s when they took over power, and up to the time when he also overthrew the government of Strasser and became the leader. The civilian leadership is really negotiated from him, and he has also leveraged on that to go back into office. So here is his challenge. First and foremost, his credibility comes to play. For him to be effective, he has to be credible, and that would also call to his own political credentials. What are his political credentials at home? He has been challenged by the 2023 elections, which up to today does not have a universal acceptance. And the economy is also threatened. Yes, he's laying emphasis on human capital, he's laying emphasis on education, but beyond that, he also has to actually play out his leadership qualities that he needs to unlock. He is no longer a greenhorn in politics. He is, so to speak, a leader who should by now be leading by example. So here is the challenge for him. For you to be able to have and actually actualize those aspirational policies that you outlined, he has to actually hone his own credentials and also come to terms with the fact that until home is good enough for the people of Sierra Leoneans, he may not have what? The domestic support. He needs that because in any case, your colleagues that you are rallying around, the policies that you want to drive, you have to drive them through what? Your credentials. How do your colleagues view you? Do they see you as somebody who could be trusted? Are you one that could be trusted? That comes to play. But beyond that, I do not have any doubt that he would actually justify the confidence repose in him, because if he fails, the question would be, yes, the two past leaders are of the old bloc, older statesmen. You had Nana Akufo, and he did very well. And President Tinubu has also done very well. Two of them successively, they had their challenges. The challenge of what? First, it was Guinea, now then followed by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. All of that ethic is coming to play. And until you have a very decisive and purposeful attendance to that, ECOWAS will be weakened further. ECOWAS like I said, it needs to be purposeful. It needs to follow the path of progress, both from within, because much of the trouble that ECOWAS is having is because the majority of its people are uneducated and poor. And once you have that, that is actually, what you call it now, a recipe for the strife that we have. So it's a very serious leadership position that I am hopeful that he, because of his credential and because of who he is, he should be able to, what we call it, play out successfully.
Well, you just mentioned a very interesting part, which is also, you know, trying to rate President Tinubu's two-year chairmanship period. How do you think he'll be remembered? Because in this season we had, or yes, within the tenure of his leadership, we had pretty serious concerns about Burkina Faso, about Mali, and lastly Niger. And it would seem that some people said, oh, what was done with ECOWAS, with him as the chair, were certain missteps. Would you say that will be what his tenure will be remembered for, given the fact that you know, these people left under his leadership? Or would you say that he was trying to be assertive for ECOWAS, on behalf of ECOWAS, given what it is that the regional body is supposed to stand for?
There's nothing he could have done, so to speak, about Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. The French, or the Anglophone bloc, which was actually one of the blocs that formed the ECOWAS Union, they've always had their own peculiarities. Their bond with France and the economic dependence of France come with its own real peculiarities. And for a very long time, ECOWAS had believed that they had gone past the nightmare of coups. Mind you, ECOWAS was formed by coup veterans, and but they saw the need for economic integration and political stability. That was why they actually formed ECOWAS. Yadema and Yakubu Kwan saw the need to go past those constitutional aberrations for economic prosperity, and you cannot have that without having a stable democratic life for the region. And luckily, for a long time, like I said, we had thought that we have gone past that. And when you now had, first in Guinea, and successively you have what had happened in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, it will scare anybody to his own bone marrow. And the initial response to me was expected, but there is also the issue of leadership that comes with what? Being very cautious and circumspect. President Tinubu knew that if the life...
Mr. Karabo, I'm afraid,
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I wish we had more time. We really do have to go. But I believe that our viewers would have taken some meat from what it is that you have told us this morning, especially about the region, the tenor of President Tinubu, and also the task that lies ahead for President Madabio. We have to thank you very much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, Mr. Sam Kagbo is a senior advocate of Nigeria, a law teacher, a columnist, and also a movie producer. Well, that's how we wrap up our program this morning. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maope Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makine. Go make Nigeria great this week.